it. Same MPs passed a law that totally blocks people, and it was validated by the High Court in the name of having a national character. So you're required to have 1,000 people in at least 24 counties. We're required to have functional officers in at least 24 counties. So you need 1,000 people. It means that you have to do some magic. You have to play around. You have to do whatever to run 24 officers. Even if you put each officer 10,000 shillings a month, say 3,000 paying for a shop, and then there may be another 7,000 having a security guard and a receptionist. So 10,000. How many ordinary Kenyans can afford that monthly? Nobody. So people who can have access to money and mostly less money, who can form political parties. When I was constrained to form the National Reconstruction Alliance Party, I had to do trickster deals. I had to go to the student body. I got students to be members. I got students to be officials. I got students to register their homes as party officers. Otherwise, you can't. So that architecture whereby only the rich can form political parties and therefore create personality cults is at the root of our problems. Then you come from there, you move to the voting itself. The way the parties then are owned by people, therefore you must be subservient to these owners. They are not institutions so that can just be that can midway the democratic process. And so the leaders who get replaced and who get appointed, the only thing you need is loyalty to the owner of the party, and then you can get the ticket of the party. And then you can be elected to parliament. So the people don't have an opportunity to replace their leaders. So the architecture whereby legislators do not have a time limit then becomes abused to the extent that the owners of these parties can keep on recycling this and that and that. You've got people who have been nominated 3 times to parliament. The women and what have you. So yet the nomination was supposed to provide a platform for somebody to be exposed within that constituency so that they can be able to go out and maybe look for votes and stuff. So we really need to look at the question of the architecture, the policy framework, the legal framework for political parties. Then we might not end up in a situation whereby once we democratize political parties, by making it easy for very few people to form a political party and run, then the question of leaders staying on in perpetuity will not arise. So you'll be able to replace leaders based on their performance. The police ruling is clearly the judgment on the police that they cannot, the ruling that they cannot use various tools against unarmed demonstrators, epitomizes the problem we have with the rule of law in this country. There's no way you can enforce the law by breaking the law. And the Inspector General of Police, who has command responsibility over the police, should personally be held accountable for the violation of this law. So they need to have him in contempt, and I think from listening to the group, when I get back to the Senate, although we are still busy with addressing the motion on the state of the nation, after that I'll be constrained to move a motion to have the Inspector of the Police cited and declared incompetent to hold office for both for that violation of the law and also for the command responsibility for the killings and the violence we saw in the streets. People cannot just go scot-free. We also need to have a judicial a commission of inquiry into those killings, into that violence that was visited on kids who are virtually walking. Whom I don't mind me calling you kids because they're the age of my kids, who are virtually walking on the streets with smartphones and making legitimate demands. They were in no way subverting the nation. Even the president who called them prisoners. He had no reason. And if you look at the fires, I was in parliament. I saw what happened. I saw the people coming. They were peaceful. And even the rushing of the parliamentary structures was a reaction to the snipers who are shooting. That's when I saw people surge forward. And why don't we have any pictures of anybody touching anything? Why didn't the demonstrators ban parliament, which was easier to ban than setting fire on the officers of the police? Who started the fires? Why don't we have pictures of people breaking the furniture in parliament? Why is furniture broken even in the upper floors of parliament, that's now areas that are damaged? Which demonstrator got there to damage those parts? Who damaged the parliament? It was not the demonstrators. Who banned these things? It was not demonstrators. Nobody had I didn't see anybody with a bottle of cocktail. Neither has anybody pointed a cocktail, a bottle of cocktail. So we must get down and hold the police and the commanders up to the president who gave orders to shoot and kill, accountable for what happened. And these are crimes against humanity. Article 143 of the Constitution does not protect the president from prosecution for crimes against humanity, and I hope the Law Society will take it up and prosecute the president of Kenya for crimes against humanity. You don't cut down peaceful protesters with bullets. So people with command responsibility are known. In individual executors on the ground may not be known, but people with command responsibility are known. And by holding them accountable and by squeezing them, we can wring out the perpetrators who pulled the triggers. The kind of tear gas we are using now is not the tear gas we saw. I was personally arrested 28 times in demos and they prosecuted, or I was acquitted in all. 28 times. There's no police station in Nairobi that I've never slept on the floor. And I've always slept on the floor and cleaned the toilets. And when I leave, the toilets are cleaner than when I went there. But never did I see tear gas that explodes. I've never seen that. What kind of weapons are these? Where did they come from? Do we have legislation approving or setting out the kind of weapons that can be used on the public? We have no registration on that water cannon, so that water is colored. What chemicals are there? Are they carcinogenic? And given the pressure with which they hit somebody, do they poison that person? So there's a lot to be done in legislation, and what has happened really opens our eyes. And me, when I get back to the Senate, I want to do quite a bit of legislation to achieve that. And because I'm talking legislation, allow me to answer the question on obstetric violence and what have you. It is true that our maternity wards are in a mess. Pregnancy in Kenya has become a disease. It's not a natural phenomenon anymore. Women are dying from deliveries. And there's this obsession in certain sections because the doctors make a bit of more money than that. Women are being chopped up like some pieces of mutton or whatever, I don't know, like sliced up like bread. So there's a lot that needs to be done in the area of maternal health care, maternal and childhood health care. And I'm happy that there's a bill in Senate by Senator Ogola, nominated senator from Nicholas Ogola from Homa Bay. She has brought a very, very good bill, which has gone through a second reading. And now it's waiting for the third reading where you can make some amendments and stuff. And I would request that that petition be brought to the Senate, can even be brought to me, and maybe the fellows behind this petition come up and look at this bill and introduce whatever amendments they would like to see in that bill so that they cater for the issues we are discussing. This bill is even addressing the questions of infertility and all those kind of things. So it's a very good bill, but can be improved on, and the stage for improving on is now. I would like to tell people a bit something I've discovered when I go to the legislature. Article 109 of the Constitution, Clause 1, states very clearly that Parliament, I'm paraphrasing it, that Parliament exercises its legislative authority through bills introduced in Parliament, approved by Parliament, and assented to by the President. Nothing else. Parliament doesn't have another tool. So when you bring a petition, when you bring a statement, when you bring a motion and all these things, there are no mechanisms of enforcing the resolutions of Parliament. At the very best, maybe there are just opportunities for parliamentarians to earn some sitting allowances, because we earn allowances when we sit on these things. But I don't see where they go, even where Parliament comes up with a very good resolution in a motion, where it comes out with a very good resolution in a petition, where it comes out with a very good resolution in a statement. They end up there. They go nowhere. There are no mechanisms for enforcing these resolutions. So I only see that the only thing that eventually that has teeth in Parliament is legislation. And even the Constitution states that legislative authority is exercised through bills approved by Parliament and assented to by the President. So bring that petition and let us subsume it into the bill that's on the floor of the Senate. There's room to amend it after what is going on. That then the issues you come can be carried forward and be made law. And once they are made law, then you can go to court and enforce them. You cannot go to court to enforce a resolution, a statement, a motion from Parliament. So let us know these things for what they are. At the very best, they help give parliamentarians information on what is happening. Like we had a petition on Granville from Mukambani, Granville Sacco, which was brought by Senator Kavindu. And that one has informed us to amend the Cooperative Societies Act, because we realized that there was thuggery in the cooperative movement, whereby they just had the ministry commandering taking over these societies, dissolving them, stealing their properties and whatever. So we are now working out on something to put this thing in a proper perspective. So let us focus on legislation. Let us focus on the bills that come into Parliament. The way you focus on the finance bill, that is the only way Parliament acts and has force of law. But with petitions and others, at the very best, can inform the legislature of what things people are going through. But the findings, the resolutions, and the petitions of themselves go nowhere. So that petition, please, bring it to the Senate. You can send it to me. You can send it to the clerk. In fact, the petition moves faster when the petitioner directly moves it to the clerk than when the petitioner moves it through a member. So go and file your petition with the clerk of the Senate, and also come. Let us sit down with the Senator Ogola and others in the Health Committee and get your ideas and let the data you have, let it inform that process of the maternal health and early childhood budget bill that's on the floor of Parliament. Then you get a law that gives you and answers the issues you are raising in your petition. So
can I please piggyback on that question on maternal child health? Bwana Umtata, are you able to explain to the listeners why we do not have life-saving vaccines right now? I would like to just piggyback on the discussion on maternal child health. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The Senate, and I've claimed the schooling cost limitation, that they don't have the vaccines. That's what we were told when we called the various government officials. And they came out with things like procurement, things like allocation of resources, and stuff like that. But then again, the question of having my priorities wrong. And it's not something that should be allowed to happen at all, because we are losing a whole generation, and the diseases that have already been wiped out in this country are going to re-emerge, because we are surrounded by countries where some of these diseases are prevalent. And when a child is not vaccinated within a certain period of time, then the opportunity is lost. So the committee, the resolution of Parliament was that the ministry moves with speed and acquires these products. Now, the problem we have with this country is one. Those who are old enough like me, and maybe slightly younger, will remember that we lived at a time when government stores were branded. If it's Panadol from the government, it initials GK. If it is syrup, the bottle would be clearly marked Government of Kenya, not for sale. If it was gloves, the packets would be that, and the individual gloves would be marked with the initials GK, GK, GK. Why did the government stop branding it is supplies? It is stores. And you'll find that these things are supplied. And if you go to county governments, you go where you'll find that they'll see data showing that these materials have been procured, they have been supplied from Genzs, have done what, but they are not in hospitals. Where are they? They're in private pharmacies. So, even these vaccines I've rolled out that they could have come in and then have gone into the private hands, and so the government mechanisms are not there. I'm sure if you want to vaccinate your child, you go to a private hospital, you'll get the vaccines there. But they're not in
absolutely. Yeah, so
government stores are no longer branded. They're not branded. So if you can know somebody's using a vaccine.
Anna, interrupting you is talking.
Yes.
Continue, Senator. Sorry. The speakers.
Yeah. So we need to agitate that government stores must be branded. The school equipment scheme, you remember it? Why did it collapse? What happened to it? Some of us never had to buy a book for the entire time we went to school, up to and including secondary school. To A-level, we never bought a book. You could only buy a book if you wanted extra reading, like some of us used to do. But the books were always there. So this thing of saying that the market forces should take over this country is again a problem we have. We must restore the primacy of political action in the Kenyan space. The Kenyan state must not just be a tax collector. It must be an effective service provider. It must provide health. It must provide education. It must provide transport. And it must provide those essentials. So, when the government just becomes tax collector, and where it wants to provide a service, it creates a mechanism for it to say owners and the leeches to then steal from the public, like the subsidized fertilizer. Look at subsidy programs all over the world. In serious countries, go to India where there are heavy subsidies. India, the subsidies work because they give out vouchers. You don't have to begin importing fertilizer as the government of Kenya and storing it. You simply intervene on the market by having a database of farmers, knowing the needs of each farmer, and giving the farmer vouchers equivalent to their needs. Then the farmer goes to the ordinary store. If the fertilizer is 7,000, and they have subsidizing it to go for 2,000, you have a voucher of the remaining 5,000. You give the person a voucher of 5,000, you take your fertilizer, you pay the 2,000, the shopkeeper will go to the government and redeem his voucher. He's paid the 5,000. That way you avoid the government having to import things, having to store things, having to do all these funny things that we have. The things are there. You come here and we mess up everything. It's like if I came to your house and I want to honor the code of nature, and I'm from the village, I'm used to traveling a kilometer to go to the toilet, and you tell me, no, just go that route, help yourself. Then I help myself, but I come back, I say, wow, this is a miracle. Today I've been able to honor the code of nature within a house. In the living room. What am I doing? It should not be functional. I've gotten the design completely wrong. So one of the big problems again we have in this country is a design problems. It's a design problem. We take noble ideas and fail them by designing the things are available in the private sector, not available in the public sector. The private sector is a market sector, making profit out of our misery and what have you. And very few of us can afford it. And so what happens? The majority of the people go without essential services. Article 26 on the right to life is meaningless if a child cannot be vaccinated at birth. It's a total violation of the rights of the child. The rights of children in the Constitution are also violated. So it's a very, very painful area. And I think maybe that we raise it, maybe within this act that's being made, we may need to make it a criminal offense for a child, for a facility that provides maternity services, not to have these vaccines. So that's how they answer that. If I can go to the next question, I would look at
Senator.
I could want to look at is the question of the right to recall, the Katiba Institute case. I was not a party to the case, but I followed it keenly. And again, we've got this problem of our judges trying to be managers and doing a bad job of it, because they look at the law through the keyhole and not through, they don't go to the balcony and look at the law as a whole. So, when a judge says that the elections are expensive, what does he have in mind? He has a paper election in mind. He doesn't have a digital election that may not even require mobilizing people to go to polling stations. He doesn't. He doesn't look at the fact that a recall can be done through platforms, and the IBC needs to have a digital register. The biometrics they get should be biometrics that can be utilized effectively, not using the KIMS kit like a mouse to activate an idle computer for you to now begin to do what you want to do. The IBC should be able to give us a KIMS kit whereby voting is very easy and simple. You don't have to be millions of shillings on an election. So if that is done, if we can get the architecture in the election process correct, and we get a digital platform for doing elections, and which is anticipated under Chapter 7, a tamper-proof election that's accurate, simple, verifiable, and whatever. If our elections are simple, why should they be expensive? So when the judge writes that the elections are expensive, has he taken time, or she taken time, to look at the whole constitution and see that what is the architectural electoral system that the constitution requires? So our judges go far and try to make pronouncements, try to be managers, and they do that in extreme ignorance of the law. And they end up coming up with decisions that are just laughable. Like I mentioned that in the first Raila petition of the presidential petition, the Supreme Court pronounced itself that technology fails. Technology fails. Technology is based on the laws of physics. How does it fail? The fact is that technology can be compromised by three things. One, sabotage, incompetence, or ignorance. Technology does not fail. So when the Supreme Court of Kenya pronounces that technology fails, that's arrant nonsense. So we need to get back to the situation whereby judges, if they want to be managers, they should manage the thing in terms of the holistic understanding of the legal framework. Otherwise, let them stick to being judges and just make pronouncements that this is the law, these are the facts, and this is what happened, this is the decision. So, in the Katiba Institute thing, the judges cannot claim that their common sense as managers is enough to amend the constitution. It's not. The same thing with the issue of women. In the constitution, the word is gender principle. Article 27, clause 8. Article 81. There is nothing called gender rule in the constitution. The Supreme Court invented the word gender rule And all of you know that there's a difference between a rule and a principle. And so they begin saying, all this commotion now comes up about the gender rule, the gender rule, the gender rule. Everybody talks about the gender rule. Nobody talks about the gender principle. What is the distinction between a principle and a rule? And what was the Supreme Court up to when it was pronouncing that there was a gender rule in the Constitution? You go to the question of balloting. Instead of the judges pronouncing themselves, the Supreme Court judges pronouncing themselves that the elections are void because you had spoiled ballots and the Constitution does not provide for spoiled ballots, they become managers. They begin saying, okay, you have spoiled ballots. Do they count or don't they count? That's nonsense. The election should have collapsed on the fact of the judges realizing that the election did not meet the threshold. The election had spoiled ballots because the election was manual. The architecture and the Constitution is digital. You can't have a spoiled ballot when you vote digitally. Those are the issues. You have had the question of referenda. You're required to raise a million vote signatures. A million signatures being verified manually will take the DCI, I think, 10 years to verify. But if they're digital, they'll get a gadget, their gadget will do it in 5 seconds or 5 minutes. So the entire architecture of our Constitution, even the public participation, if we had a digital voters register and whatever, people would be able to vote digitally on issues and have referendums on everything we are legislating. So that is the problem that we have. The Katiba Institute case, the judges have reached themselves. They acted by interior, was in ignorance of the law, and that one for me needs to be appealed, but I don't know whether an appeal will go any further because it seems to have the same problem. And I think the Law Society of Kenya and others who, the judges are members of the Law Society, they need to do refresher courses for judges, especially on the technical areas of the Constitution. We are getting judgments that are horrible. On technical areas of the Constitution, so that our judges should not become managers, they remain judicial officers. If they want to manage, they want to try to pronounce management positions, then let them do that with the knowledge of the entire law. The next thing I want to speak to, the conflict of interest bill. It really was mutilated in the Senate. And the problem has been in the Senate sometimes that we have got things just pushed through. There was a time, if I may give an example of what happened to the floor of the Senate once, we had the impeachment of the Siaya governor, where the government side, which was the passed a motion, should be impeached. And it came to the floor of the House. And then some of phone calls were made, and the government side was had to shut down their own position. Something had changed. We had the IPC Amendment Act, which came from the National Assembly, with a lot of issues. And the Senate arrested those issues, and people put their foot down, made proper amendments, captured a lot of the things that ended up with the demonstration that killed the people in parts of this country, saying no IPC, no reform, no IPC. We had put all the things rejecting what had come from the National Assembly. Our chairman, I'm a member of the JLAC, the chairman went and read the document, our report on the floor of the House. No, we submitted the report on the floor of the Speaker. We had a special sitting. It was during December. We had a special sitting. The Senate was on recess. They recalled for a special sitting to pass the IPC bill. When we got there, we noticed, some of us noticed things were not going according to plan, because on the order paper, in the morning session, they'd put things that we had not been notified about, some which were not in the Gazette, which was also wrong. He said now the bill will be read, the paper will be tabled in the morning, but then it will be debated in the afternoon, the report of the committee. So we were prepared, ready to debate this motion and to justify why we felt that what had come from the National Assembly, it was not up to scratch, and we needed to deal with the question of how the IPC should be constituted. Having done case studies in the US, case studies in the UK, in most of the European countries, in Japan, in Australia, and whatever, to inform what kind of bill we need to be able to do a proper electoral body. Having looked at even our own history, IPPG, having looked at Brazil, having looked at South Africa, and especially the countries that have a presidential system like us. There are only four. I think it is Philly, it is the US, Nigeria, Kenya, South Korea, sometimes the Philippines. So we were able to be, our secretariat had done a very good job. We were properly informed, and we got a bipartisan position that we are going to vote in a certain way to force these changes so that what the National Assembly has done is revised. When the afternoon came and we thought the quorum was confirmed, before we could speak, the speaker called on our chairman to address the House. What the chairman is supposed to do at that stage is to move, to read the report so that there can be a motion on whether we adopt it or reject it. But wonders, our chair simply stood up and said, we are withdrawing the report. First of all, you can't withdraw a report from the Senate. Once you table it, it's a property of the Senate. It cannot be voted, it cannot be rejected by a vote, or it's accepted by a vote. So it was withdrawn. Our attempts to protest were killed. The speaker said the paper is withdrawn. The law is passed as it came from the Senate, and there with no amendments. So it went, it was signed into law, and you saw the violence that came from the Azimio side, the demos and all that damage. And you wonder how a chair, now when you ask the chair, he confides in you that, well, he was called and prevailed upon to do that. He also believes it was wrong to do that. So these are the situations that you find yourself when a parliament has been captured and is totally transactional. These kind of things happen. So the conflict of interest bill suffered a similar fate. But after what you guys did, when parliament was independent, people have sobered up. If you have been listening to the debate in the Senate, the leader of majority apologized for having done some of these machinations. So we want to do, going forward, we want to know which bills suffered this defeat and how they can be recalled to the Senate. Or if they have become law, how they can be amended. So thank you for that. You liberated the Senate in that sense. Now, if you look at the debate in the Senate today, it's different from the debate in the Senate before July, before 25th June. And that's what happened. So the conflict of interest bill has got issues, I agree, but there's a general agreement that the bill has to be recalled and to be fixed. It was manipulated in the Senate. So the other thing, we have the question of the internet in Busia. Yes, somehow the Ugandan systems seem to be stronger than the Kenyan systems in whatever. And so, and that I used to have it in my village also. So one time, my village is fairly remote from anywhere else, called Pangamoro villages, so totally remote from civilization. So this have a little bit of interference and overlapping from the Ugandan networks. So one time I ran into Bob Colimo, and after when the TV station has been banned and what have you, I ran into Bob Colimo. He was quite a gentleman, so we chatted. So when he asked me for my number, I gave him my Airtel number. And he said, for heaven's sake, how can you give me the CEO of Safaricom? How do you give me an Airtel number? You don't have a Safaricom number. I told him, yes, I have a Safaricom number, but I can't use it when I'm at home because it's overridden by the Ugandan systems, hardly audible, and sometimes by whatever. So he asked me, where is your village? So I told him my village, where it was. And within 2-3 weeks, people on the ground surveying, and they erected a mast for Safaricom. And our networks improved, and that was not enough. When Celtel saw that, they also came in my village and they erected another mast of Airtel. So my village has got two powerful masts. Been able to use this what do you call Wi-Fi when I'm in the middle of my village because of those masts being there. But it's in the middle of nowhere in Busia. So the problem of Busia is marginalization. But if you look at the power that we have in Western Province, I think it's 11 kV or something like that. So we are heavily marginalized as a region. Those who are old enough to remember that at one time Idi Amin claimed the boundary of Kenya was in Naivasha. That's when Jomo Kenyatta sort of began looking over this side of the country. Even TV stations, when we began, we used to receive TV from Uganda. Even my father's telephone, the post office box number, when we were growing up, was in Tororo, Uganda, box 8, Tororo. And to go on bicycles every Saturday to go and pick letters, check if there are letters in my father's mailing box, box 8, Tororo in Uganda. So you'll find that there's marginalization, and the Kenyan state in Busia is very, very thin. If you go to the waters of Lake Victoria, the Kenyan state is hardly visible, with Ugandan fellows coming and terrorizing our fishermen, fisher folk, and what have you. So the absence of the Kenyan state in the border areas is a thing for concern. Even the boundary of Kenya was buried somewhere in Busia by Idi Amin when there was a complaint and he built a road, and the boundary shifted by about 20 meters or something into Kenya. It is now there. It's become a de facto boundary. So these things are there. The Kenyan state is largely absent. But the irony of it is that I think Busia, Nairobi, and Mombasa are the only counties that have the entire establishment of the Kenyan government. All ministries are there. If you go to Minyeri, you might not get some ministries. But come to Busia, all the ministries in Nairobi are in Busia, all the ministries that are in. So you wonder why Busia, strategic as it is, important as it is so marginalized, but has a lot of money. Go to any bank in the morning in Busia and see the bundles of money being banked. You don't know where this money comes from. But when you look at the economy of the area, it's totally deprived, totally desolate. So there are issues that need to be done, some at the national level, some at the county level. But at the county level, we are beginning to deal with these issues. And we hope that along the line, the government will stop fighting me and we cooperate and see how we can help each other to achieve this. I've got Samia and Bunyala. These are hardship areas. I had never gone there, but when I go to a place, those who know, the place like the Muduru in Samia, when I go to there the first time when I was campaigning for the first time, I was shocked by the kind of water the people were drinking on the shores of Lake Victoria. They were drinking surface runoff. The kind of waters my cows in the other part of Busia cannot drink. But these are people drinking it. So I've also had to pursue that thing. And right now, if you check the map of arid and semi-arid areas, you will find counties in Busia, sub-counties in Busia, that's Funula and Bunyala, are now clearly marked as arid and semi-arid. I'm now pushing for the same benefits that go to Northeastern for semi-arid and arid areas to come to these areas of Busia. Take the question of flooding in Bunyala. It has become a shock for some people. Yet the permanent solutions can be found. The lake is overflowing. There's a lot of backflow right now. We know that the Ugandans constructed the a power station on Bujagali Falls. We need to know whether this is the same thing that happened in the early 60s. After the Owen Falls were set up, the lake suffered a similar backflow until diversions were created to allow water to flow into Egypt. I don't know if the Bujagali Falls is responsible for what is happening today. A lot of people have been displaced by the lake. And many people don't know that Busia has got a big chunk of Lake Victoria. So Lake Victoria is overflowing and it's flowing backwards into the homes of people. So that could be an international problem that needs the intervention of the national government, with the Ugandan government, to find out with scientific study why is the lake flowing back, why is the lake not flowing into Egypt? In the Bujagali Falls, the reason just like the Owen Falls were some time back. So the issues of Busia should be understood in that case, and I think some of them I'm able to tackle and I'm trying to tackle. Others are escalating to the national government, and they should be tackled at that level. Although sometimes the problem is you go to these offices and they tell you now you need to support the president. But the opposition is only supporting the president when he goes wrong and you oppose his wrong actions. You are supporting him. Those of you watched the video when I spoke to the president in Busia last year, telling him follow the law or we will fight you or things like those. If the president followed the law, the Genzs would not have gone to the street. You would have done what you always do. This country would be doing very well. But the disregard for the law is what is bringing us here. There was another question on corruption in Busia. Yes, I agree there's been a heavy corruption in Busia, and it just
Corruption in Busia is interfering with you, Senator. After all, how do you want to take this further? Maybe we can give Senator.
I think what we do, corruption is just like it is in other parts of the country. And the kind of law enforcement, the Office of the Auditor General is compromised. They just publish poetry about Busia. The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission is compromised. They take no action. I've sent them intelligence on theft or pending theft, where people have come to me with the insider information. And because of what the courts ruled when I was fighting the SDR, that I got documents illegally, you can't use them. I've got a lot of good documents that I have that I acquired illegally from whistleblowers and whatever, but because they're up to the Supreme Court, they said I can't use them to any value. I'm helpless. That's why I've written to that's why I've gone to court to try and force the court itself to order that the governor hands over the officially hands over these documents to me. But as we speak right now, the forensic audit that we have done in Busia, we cannot account for 2.3 billion shillings in a budget year. The budget of Busia is only about 8 billion shillings. When you take away the salaries and whatever recurrent expenditure, then 2.8 from development cannot be accounted for. What are you dealing with? 2.3 cannot be accounted for. What are you dealing with? But that I cannot use it in court. I cannot use it anywhere because the court say you must acquire this document through the front door. That a whistleblower cannot whistleblow to a citizen. A whistleblower cannot whistleblow to the same authorities that are doing the mistakes. That's what those are the courts. That's what they've done. So we would have totally, even so last time there was a break-in in my office, but I'm also .com in a way, most of these things are on the cloud. So whatever was taken did not compromise the information I have. So the county government, when you took over, and how did you account for it? Give me this. Isuzu Kenya goes only for 5.6 million shillings, and you have paid 13 million shillings for it, ex-Japan. How? All those things you don't get. When I went to court, I was even stoned when I was leaving court. They are going to hire to hammer me. goods were sent to try and eliminate me in my home. Fortunately, I had left. So when you end up in a very toxic environment like that, then you begin asking yourself very, very difficult questions, because 2011, I think, between Parliament and the executive over how the SGR had been conceptualized and effected. So when these people were summoned, they came with documentation. It was a public hearing, which I attended. But I had the presence of mind when people went for lunch. I gave the clerks, I asked the clerks who they could photocopy for me. They said they got paper. Who attended, and MPs who represent the people who are looking at these documents. How did those documents become illegal? After the deals were made, that's when now people, when they came from lunch, I think some sweetheart deals have been made. The documents were mopped up and taken away. And when you tell the court, this is how I acquired these documents, they say you stole them. In which they dedicated a whole paragraph (49) discussing me. Of me condemning the court. The only thing the court has mentioned social media is only what to say. So for me, these things that we have, we want to the Evidence Act, to the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Act, so that we make exceptions for evidence. Because how else will you acquire evidence of corruption? It's not like these guys will come and give you evidence of them being corrupt. Is it time to amend maybe the statutes that are there, which protect that issue of using evidence that is acquired in a questionable, quote-unquote, questionable manner? And then when I have the mic, because I won't have the opportunity, a friend of mine has asked me to ask you, with that issue of recalling MPs, isn't it better to test that constitutional provision, even using that judgment of Katiba as it is right now? Because already I am aware some constituencies have begun the process before we begin looking at the issues of where the judges overreached and became managers rather than stating the law as it is. Sorry for interjecting, that's all. Well, I think
Yes, if you can add this
time and they gave us for practical purposes, it's there. But I think the LSSK needs to say
on the legally obtained evidence, is it time to move an amendment to the Evidence Act and to the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Act so that even if it's an exception only on matters of corruption, we have an exception that you can use this evidence regardless of how it is acquired, because corrupt people will not come and give you evidence of them being corrupt.
Yeah, that's I think what needs to be done. So that the whistleblower act, to whom the whistleblower can be. Because take a case whereby somebody is working in a government institution, he has access to very sensitive information that is of corrupt nature, not necessarily the strategic interest of the country, of corrupt nature, and he goes to Boniface Mwangi and gives Boniface Mwangi that information because he has got confidence in Boniface Mwangi, not trusting the police, or he believes even if he gets to the police, you may not go anywhere. The police themselves are in handcuffs from those who control executive power. So, could it be legitimate for a whistleblower to give Boniface Mwangi a document? So, and I think also the Evidence Act needs to be amended to allow for a ring-fence provision whereby citizens can inform other citizens on corruption and
Nimepata views. Mimi nimeweka tu. Sijui kama kuna mtu amewatch.
so the Evidence Act need to be looked.
Sitoke nilikuwa.
Niko.
Ndio ni hapo.
And that's why I was saying that maybe people are better endowed than myself. People have gone to law school, people have studied these things. Need to look at the laws of Kenya and align them to the Constitution of Kenya. And also, we need also to demarcate constitutional proceedings away from ordinary civil proceedings and criminal proceedings. The failure to separate constitutional proceedings from ordinary civil proceedings is the other problem we are having. That largely, constitutional proceedings are handled under the civil procedures, which are limited to an extent that are protecting individuals. Constitutional proceedings are public law. The government has no rights. Rights belong to people. The government has only the mandate, is a duty holder, is a duty bearer where rights are involved. So that provision can be ring-fenced, that in constitutional proceedings, how evidence is acquired is not important. What's important is what does the evidence bring to the case? How does it help the court determine this dispute? And if we did that, we had a clear procedure for constitutional proceedings. I know we have what they call the Mutunga rules, which guides the proceedings under Article 22. But we also have the provisions of the Constitution which lie outside the Bill of Rights. What governs them when you're proceeding? Are they still the Mutunga rules? So there's a need to look at the laws of this country, and they maybe now have three procedures. We have got a procedure in criminal law, procedures in civic matters, and procedures in constitutional disputes. Then that way maybe we shall help ourselves. So the other thing I'll go to when I'm answering will be what is left. I've done with the question of tribalism. I've dealt with the issues of infrastructure in this year. I've dealt with the question of recycling leaders generally. I've dealt with the police ruling on the use of certain gadgets during riots and the disobedience of those orders and how the fellows are supposed to be held accountable. I have also dealt with the question of the statics. I've dealt with the recall to right to recall in relation to the decision by the Katiba Institute. The last question is that will I run for president if the people say I should run for president? And this country is not united forces.
Oh, only the dead laser.
ask because it was the issue aliongelea and I really want to get it done. So can I proceed? Okay, please ask one last question. You have many people. Okay, just a minute. Okay, Mtata, you talked about Busia airstrip. There is this area from Busia, Kwanzia, Tanaka. From Tanaka, when you go all the way to Roadblock, that area is where we term as the airstrip. But the area right now have people building on that land, yet it is government land. People have grabbed it. As the senator, what are you doing to ensure that we still have an airstrip in Busia? The other issue is if you go to Busia Korinda area, there is this area in Korinda where the government had moved market just opposite to Busia prisons. That market since then has never been functional because there are people who wanted to get rent from those people that were buying shops. I tried to purchase a shop there in 2022, but 2021, 2022, but I was not successful because I was told bring money so that we can give you a shop. They were asking for 150,000 to give me a kiosk that place. I declined and bought a shop just close to Roadblock. The other last question is, okay, Mtata, right now we are having a revolution whereby the president was speaking about budgets and borrowing. Don't you think you legislators are earning a lot of money which should be cut at least to around 250,000 shillings per legislator so that we can create more jobs and create more income for the country? Because we have to live by our means. We should not go out borrowing. What is your take on that, on the salaries of MPs being cut? Thank you.
Sawa, thanks. I think, Senator, there was a lady who had been trying to put a question through Hannah. Are you ready to give your whatever? And I can see Mariam also has her hand up.
Yes, thank you, Afrocentric and Chege. I think you couldn't hear me, so I had to drop out and come back. Thank you, Afro. Senator, thank you for a very informative and lengthy description and discussion on matters that you were asked. But in regards to the last question, if I may start there, but I wanted to talk about something else. There is no safeguarding the evidence. I don't think would do anything much if we are not giving any incentives to the whistleblowers. That's number one. Number two, whistleblower protection. If the whistleblowers are not protected, then you would not have many people who have any reason to come forward with this. So I don't know why that up to now there is actually in the law, there is no provisions for the whistleblower. There is no protection for those whistleblowers. Because if there was, believe me, we would have more whistleblowers and maybe things would not get as ugly as they have. Now, that said and done, there was the petition that you said send it to you or bring it to you. That petition has already been brought to the House. And I'm sorry, Kenyans, but I don't know. Why do we have proportion representation if those women rep are not actually working on matters to do with women, matters that affect women? They're there and they're supposed to be at the center of legislations making that affect directly or indirectly affecting women. So for me, I think that also is a failure. I don't know how other women in Kenya feel, but I think it's a man's world out there. Yes, the government have tried. They've put they've said women representation, a proportional representation. They've allocated some seats for us. This was actually Western propagated, but is it still delivering for women? I do not think so. If this bill is there with the women's Senate and it's still not being touched, there's a lot of decisions and there are a lot of policies surrounding women's rights the government, the people who are representing women are actually not on most of those caucuses. And if they're there, they're actually overpowered by the men in those caucuses. So I don't know how our representation in this houses where the legislations are made is helping us, because we see some caucus are more men than women, and these decisions that are being made that affect women directly or indirectly more than the men, and women are not there despite the allocation of seats for women. So back to you, Senator. Thank you very much.
Mariam?
Oh, thank you. Thanks a lot. Good morning. Afrocentric. Now, I had two questions. One of them was and then the second question I had was around procurement. You know, when we're talking about corruption, we talk about it very vaguely, but we don't pinpoint where the money is lost when we say corruption. I think most of the money is usually lost in procurement. So do they use County Procurement Act, or do they use a National Procurement Act? And I really hope he could answer me directly so that I can give a follow-up question. And the next thing I wanted to ask him is how can he streamline the...
It's done by the national legislation. It's not county legislation.
Or the act itself.
Yeah.
So is it possible for us to have it on a county level? Because, for example, when I'm looking at your portal right now, I'm not able to access your tender documents because they're restricted. And we know that the counties lose a lot of money in, of course, wages and in the procurement. And how they lose it in the procurement is in the inflated bills because of the kickbacks and all that. And we know why people do kickbacks. So is it possible to streamline the Procurement Act on the county level? And number two, is it possible to have your budget uploaded on a portal that is open to everyone, and then all the tenders that are won to be put on the portal, actually the three top tenders, so that they can be open to public scrutiny, so that if there's anything that has been inflated, people can actually challenge it and they can be withdrawn from that tender process. Is it possible to do that? I think that's really one way of streamlining the corruption issue on a county level. So my first question to you was, what percentage of your budget goes to the wage? Can you answer me now, please, so that I can ask a follow-up question?
And the wage bill should not be more than 35% of the entire budget. And development.
I'm sorry. No, I've asked you a very specific question because I know that only 11 counties are able to adhere to the 35% threshold that has been recommended, and your county is not among them. So
just wait for him to finish.
No, he already said it was supposed to be. He said it was supposed to be, but I've asked him how much is it. He said it's supposed to be 35%.
No, I think I've gotten her question. My account is not among them. I think my account is in the 40s, about 48%, but we don't have the latest audit. (2021) audit. That's the one I've been able to scrutinize. I'm currently scrutinizing the budgets from 2022, the 2022, 2023. 2023, 2024 budgets, because even the reports from the county, from the Auditor General, are not so clear. So I've had to retain the services of a private firm, which have paid 2 million shillings from my various allowances to be able to do a forensic audit on those books of what you have been able to get, including what you have been able to get illegally under the table from the treasury and from wherever. Even from the county, some officials have given us some documents. So we're subjecting them to a public audit. And as I was telling you that in that public audit, we're having a problem with about 2.3 billion, where it had gone. And right now, we have not reached to audit the current state of affairs in the county assembly, because when the employment, the county board is also opaque. You don't know who is employed, you don't know who is not employed. It's very difficult to know what has happened there. So among the documents we require to be given to us are also documents from the county, the board, the county public board. And so I think it's a question I might not be able to pinpoint, but the fact is that the Busia County is established. But also there's another problem that the counties are facing, that where people are looking at counties as employment bureaus. And I'll play the advocate table and say that most governors are terribly under fire for employment. And these are politicians who go and look for votes and make all these funny promissory things. And I think that was a mistake, because when you remember, what would cure that would be to centralize some of these employment opportunities so that they're done by the Public Service Commission. I don't know, could be wrong proposal, but there's a problem in employment across the country. And given the failure to have industries to industrialize this country, then government remains a single largest source of jobs. So everybody's looking at the jobs. Counties are not proactive in creating